Hey guys, welcome to another Local Growth Academy podcast. I have a really cool person here today, Benson Fechter with Legacy Paint Holdings, and I'm really excited because this is the first like holding company podcast. I know there's a few of them out in the space, so like I'm excited. There's some things I know, and there's also some things I'm ignorant on. So I'm kind of excited to kind of dive in with you and learn a bit more as we kind of go through this podcast. So thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Micah.
Cool. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about like your backstory and kind of what brought you here into holding companies and painting specifically? Just kind of the elevator pitch of how you got where you are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in a contractor family. My grandfather's been in the contracting space since the 70s, sort of bounced around, started in heavy duty construction, moved to HVAC, electric landscaping, and all on like the back end business level. So he put together franchising groups in these different spaces. So from a very young age, I had a front row seat to what it looks like to run a successful contracting business.
Sure.
Worked with him from as young as I can remember. And the one of the biggest lessons he taught me was there are a lot of ways that you can make money in the U.S. today. Being an employee just happens to be the worst of them. So I knew that I had an entrepreneurial spirit itch from that very young age. So throughout high school, worked with him. My senior year of high school happened to be 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. When that hit, it was right before baseball season was about to begin, and canned the senior season there, but was given a gift, as we all were, of the abundance and really an overabundance of time. I was going off to college that fall, school in Rhode Island called Providence College, and had done a little bit of painting in the past with my church on a couple mission trips in the summers, and sort of wanted to do something with his time to make a little bit of money before going off to school. So my brother and I, was two years younger than me, we had a minivan at the time and a ladder at my grandmother's house, and we started a little student summer painting company. Very quickly, we started getting jobs coming in, and we also had a bunch of friends that had the same gift of time that we did. So we were able to sort of pluck people out of the video game COVID quarantine and put them onto painting job sites pretty quickly and pretty easily. By June of that year, we started middle of March. I was completely off of like having to be on the paint site with the paintbrush in hand to managing projects, doing estimates and sort of the back end business side, which is where I was more passionate about doing. That first summer, we completed over it was a little bit over 30 projects, and enjoyed doing it. Enjoyed the sort of freedom of being able to be outside when everybody else was cooped up inside. And I knew that I had something here that I wanted to continue to pursue. So went off to school that fall to get a business management degree at Providence College. And when I got there, I dove into sort of some of the entrepreneurial circles. Met a guy who was heavily involved in social media marketing, had a agency in high school that he was involved with. And, we were tossing back ideas and everything. And, there are plenty of student painting groups and things like that across the country. We thought, well, why don't we start our own? Might as well. And so that next summer, summer of 2021, he ran a location in Providence. I ran a location in Pittsburgh, and we had a 14-week season. Over those 14 weeks, we completed over 100 projects between the two locations, and learned a lot throughout the process in terms of dealing with student labor, dealing with collections, dealing with quality issues, all the things that you run into when running a multi-state operation like that, and the various different things that come up. We went back to school then that next fall and said, well, why don't we expand this a little bit further beyond ourselves? And we opened up 3 additional locations that next spring. So we had a location in Southern Rhode Island, Hartford, Connecticut, and New Orleans, Louisiana. So we had 5 locations that next summer. In those 5 locations, we did over 250 projects that summer of 2022. And that summer of 2022, I really realized that the whole student painting model operation, great as sort of like a seasonal side hustle type thing. But in terms of like the constant turnover and having to re-recruit people, the issues with student labor, we were getting a fair amount of callbacks and things on quality, and just naturally comes up when you do enough projects with labor that is relatively unskilled and
Yeah.
not painters essentially.
Mhm.
And there's also 38 weeks of the year that aren't the 14-week summer. So I wanted to find a way to make some money outside of that 14-week season. I've been married now for 2 years, but at the time I was considering proposing to my then girlfriend, and wanted to build something that was a little bit more sustainable, long term, visionary type thinking. So that fall, we took a look at, okay, over the last 3 summers, we had completed close to 400 different projects. And what enabled us to do that quickly, whereas a lot of contractors struggle to get to that point that have much more experience than we do.
Mhm.
And using some of the franchising systems that, from my grandfather's businesses, we developed what we call the 6 pillars of success, which are sales and marketing, HR, operations, business systems, financial planning, and accounting. And sort of wanted to take those 6 pillars and try to essentially adopt and create like a consulting marketing type company. So that fall created a firm called Precision Painting Advisors, and dove full into that. And by about Christmas or New Year of that year, realized a few different things. The consulting marketing business is a completely different business than the painting world. You're going from direct to consumer to business to business. And
Yep.
I also realized I enjoyed doing that type of work more, and the exposure that I was getting and the flexibility that it provided. So I jumped full time into the Precision Painting Advisors, and my partner at the time wanted to continue doing the student painting. He continued to run that. So over the next 2 years, worked with about 100 different contractors across North America, doing as little as $50,000, $60,000 a year, all the way up to companies doing 4, 5, $6 million a year, and was able to get exposure to what the best of the best looked like and what guys that were really struggling to just get by looked like, and what the differences were between those two companies. Because it wasn't just experience, it wasn't just quality, and it wasn't just time in the industry. It was a lot of different factors that went into it. I graduated school last May, and really wanted to then think about, what do my next 5, 10, 15 years look like? Do I want to be doing the consulting side, working with painting contractors, which I thoroughly enjoyed, or did I want to pivot and maybe step into something different? So it was last August. I was sitting down for breakfast with a few people putting roll ups together in the HVAC, electric, and landscaping spaces, sort of explaining what I was doing and hearing what they were doing. And throughout that breakfast, it dawned on me that they were playing at a much higher level than I was playing at. I felt like sort of I was in minor leagues, they were in the major leagues, and I wanted to get a taste of that. And their suggestion to me was, why don't you try to start rolling up painting companies? And so that fall, got a group of initial investors together, put a board of directors together, and started to identify who our first acquisition would be. We completed our first 3 acquisitions in the fall of 2024, converting pre-existing precision clients over to now our legacy paint holdings model. And currently, here in July of 25, we have 4 companies in the group, and other 3 that should be set to join here this quarter, with the goal to get to 10 by year's end. But throughout my whole journey, I joke that I sort of have spent the last 4 or 5 years getting my painting business PhD, and learning all aspects of the business very, very quickly. And now we're applying these proven concepts and principles of the roll up, bringing it to the painting space, with my background of actually having been there and done that in terms of being day to day as a painting business owner myself.
Gotcha. Um, cool backstory. I knew part of that, but not all of that. Um, what do you think? 'Cause for me, I love processes. What do you think is what part of the process? Because when you roll up a company, you acquire a company, you're basically plugging in your operating business operating systems, right? I've got that from you through some of your online stuff and our previous chats and such. Um, and so what is it about that model? What is it you're doing that you think is unique that, makes it valuable to even consider?
Yeah. So I would say that the big thing in terms of our processes and really what my mentality is almost boils down to a single word when we're bringing in companies. And that is systems. And we need to systematize just about every single part of the business. And what systems create is a lack of having to have, such dependency on just one person or two people, right? You can almost plug and play when you fully systematize. So going back to sort of those six pillars that we talked about, the big thing is to look at, how can we make it systematized across the board. So marketing is a great first example where an area where a lot of contractors struggle with, even the contractors that are seemingly doing well on paper, still struggle with the marketing aspect. And what we like to do is take a look at, where a company is operating in, where their service area is, and sort of throw out the notion that a lot of guys have in terms of I'll go where the work takes me and try to tighten up the service radius that we offer. So we'll find a company's operating area and we will shrink that down to about a 45-minute radius. In that 45-minute radius, we'll create essentially a list of all of the zip codes in that given 45-minute radius and try to tackle those specific zip codes. And what we're looking for in those zip codes are really three main things in our market research. We look at how many occupied housing units are within a specific zip code, which tells us essentially how many residential buildings can we paint in an area. We look at what the median household income is in those zip codes, and we look at what the median home value is in the zip codes. And those last two things, the income and the home value, through all the data that we've collected, tell us how often one of these occupied housing units is going to be painted. And it's typically every 7 to 10 years that we see it. Closer to 7 when you have higher income, higher home value, closer to 10 when the opposite is true. And through doing that, we can say, okay, there are X amount of housing units. It's going to get repainted every 7 years on average. Here are the total number of potential projects that could be here in this zip code. From there, we say, okay, if we want to do a really, really good job of marketing in this particular zip code that we wanted to work in, what is our capture rate going to look like? And for us, a good capture rate is around 3 to 5%. In that, if there are 1,000 projects being done in a particular zip code, we want to get calls on about 3 to 5% of those. And from there, it can break it down even further to here's our typical closing rate, around 35-40%. Here's how many jobs we can expect from a zip code if we're doing good marketing here. And finally, taking it one step further, in that through the data that we've collected, typical painting job is about 1.2% of the home's value. And say, here is what our income potential is in a particular zip code, and sort of build, if we want to build a $3 million painting company, okay, we can legitimately build a $3 million painting company operating in these 6 or 7 zip codes and then go from there. And just one example of the systems and the systematized approach that we try to go through, and that's the case for all 6 of our pillars. We have different things that we want to put in, but the nice thing is when you get plugged in with a group like ours, those systems are actually going to be in place. And for a lot of companies, those systems aren't there to begin with or aren't fully optimized. We have the systems there. They're fully optimized. They're tested across multiple different companies in multiple different states. And the bigger we get, the more data we're going to collect, and the quicker that feedback loop becomes.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, that loop is actually quite similar to our approach too. We do, even though we're not a holding company, we're a marketing and consulting company. We do a very, very similar research and analysis. Although we do consider weather factors in that repaint cycle. I didn't hear
Uh-huh.
that on your end, but all the other things that we do the same. So we look at like top zip codes. We want to try to keep thing at a max of 60-minute drive, but prefer a 45-minute drive. We look up, median income, median household size. We also add another data point that you may do, but I didn't hear is we look at the average renter to owner rate because typically when houses are rented, not owned, they get repainted less, not
Right.
more. So we look at that, and that comes into effect too. And then of course the weather, and then yeah, all that other stuff as well. And then
Mhm.
what we've found, and we've had several of our clients where we've got an example here just 20 minutes from me, and then another one like all the way in Washington State where both of them had like hour and a half, 2 hour driving radiuses and spending all this money. But the problem is like, you take this same budget. Let's just say it's 5 grand a month. Doesn't really matter what it is, but you take that money and you put it in a really big area, and it's like throwing a penny on a beach, and then it's just so spotty. It can't do anything.
Yeah.
But if you take that same thing and say instead of doing these like 30 zip codes across 2 county lines, we're going to be in like one city with like 10 zip codes or whatever the radius looks like. You can't really say exact number of zip codes because you get to like where you live in Philly, like zip codes are tiny, but we're here, they're a little bit bigger.
Right.
But a radius, it might be 5 zip codes, it might be 15 zip codes, whatever it is, and you just make it small. Now all of a sudden you get like the next door celebrity factor because like all your money is going to one area across like Facebook and Google and postcards and whatever else you're doing. And then you get all these other little benefits that we see that that we help our clients with. And that is like not only does your marketing dollar work better because it's in a slightly smaller area, and so like you get repeats and retargeting becomes a better thing, and people will see you on Facebook and then see you again on Google, and like those cross channel attribution things start coming into play. But then there's like all this off marketing stuff that starts coming into play that I find actually more fascinating, and it doesn't really directly benefit me from a holding company, but it does benefit my clients, and I'm sure you've considered it too, is like all the almost intangibles, like the employee satisfaction of having 30-minute drive times to and from work versus an hour to 2 hours to and from work, right? Like that's not nothing. That's huge actually. And so like you get like just less frustrated workers, which means happier. If they're happier when they go to work, customers are happy because they're happy. Happiness is contagious, right? And so like these little things of like, man, if you got to get up at 4 in the morning and be to the shop at 6, you could be to the job at 8. Like, dude, that drive time will kill you. And it takes away from your family, puts you on the road more. Uh, More people are in traffic. They tend to get a little bit more road ragey, a little bit more edgy. And then you put them on a job site and expect them to be customer facing. Like that's not nothing. And then you also get like less wear and tear on your trucks, less tire changes, less oil changes, longer depreciation. You keep your vehicles longer, less maintenance, right? Like it's just like, I don't know, man. I've done this for, I've done, consulted and implied this exact rule that you're talking about for dozens of my clients, and in no case has it been a wrong move. Every case, it's been a smart move to actually put more money into a smaller area instead of trying to get like 0.5% of this market cap of this large area, try to go for the 2, 3, 4, 5% of this smaller area. And it just like the revenue and the profitability is just like it's way, way different.
Well,
It's
it's
way
huge.
different.
It's like if you had 10 bricks, right? And your task was to build a building and you had 10 bricks a day that you were given, right? No more than that. Would you take all 10 bricks and build 1 or 2 buildings, or would you try to build 10 buildings at the same time with
Yeah.
those 10 bricks? It's a snowball effect that compounds month after month after month. Especially like you were saying, you start to get into a specific area, your yard signs, start going up, your branded
The
trucks
boring
start rolling
branded
through.
trucks and T-shirts, and people even start recognizing your shirts when your crew's at like a fast food like
Right,
lunch or something.
exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it just gets recognized everywhere. Like I know that company.
Yeah, and I mean, so much of like the painting marketing. I mean, you're looking to capture obviously your active homeowners that are looking for a painting project right now. A part of it too is trying to get brand recognition so that when a painting project comes up, oh, I know Cardinal Painting, I know Supreme Painters, I know, whatever the painting company is. I'm going to give them a call, versus, and obviously if they do look you up on Google or if they do Google painters, you're also popping up there. It's just so much more. It's a much more efficient use of the limited dollar that you have than playing that I'm going to go where the work takes me and cast that super wide net.
Yeah, I agree with it. And I also think like so one of the, this is not quite in the marketing side, but it's on the sales side, but it does relate. And that is like companies that cast too broad of a net, too wide of an area, right? What happens to the drive time for the sales reps? I had one of my clients, it was last fall, I think November, December. They were really struggling with their close rate. And so I jumped on the phone and we just talked some things through as talking with the appointment setter, the owner, salesperson, and just kind of trying to understand and dissect what was going on. And it turned out that they just had a really, really big area. And they were trying to, because they were not closing, they tried to put more appointments on the calendar, right? But because they had more appointments on the calendar, there was more drive time. And because there was more drive time, they were only dedicating like 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes at max for in-home visits.
Mhm.
Not nearly enough, right, to sell a premium product, right? I mean, if you want to be the low ticket painter and just show up and take 3 measurements and email them a proposal in a couple days and cross your fingers and hope they pick you, sure. But like if you actually want to have a consultative sales process and have a really good chance of closing it, like you said, that 35, 40%, hopefully up to 50%, you have to sit down with them. You have to spend time with them. 15 minutes is not enough, not even close. We recommend like 45 to 60 minutes,
Yeah.
you know? And so if you think about like, let's say we're going to dedicate 60 minutes for an appointment, let's add a little bit of buffer just in case, maybe a few minutes early, maybe a few minutes late. So let's add an extra 15 minutes to that. And then let's assume, 15, 30-minute drive time, right? In that radius, you need a 2-hour block on a calendar for one appointment. That means that like a salesperson should have no more than 4 meetings a day ever.
Yeah.
And these guys were doing like 8 to 10. And I'm like, yeah, let's stop that. And what's interesting is once we just like cut out some of the outer zip codes, went smaller and reduced it to 3 or 4 appointments only, their close rate like tripled, you know? Like that. And it's interesting because it's like you don't even necessarily have to become like a better painter if or better customer service. If you're happier when you show up, you're going to naturally treat people better, like we were talking about with the painters. Or in the case of the salesperson, if you're able to spend more time and you're more relaxed in your day, your sales process will come across better and you will close more, you know? So it's like that rushing and that anxiety, anything we can do for these people to like kind of just, I don't want to say make their job soft, but like make it not super stressful. You know what I mean? And if we can do that, then we have happier employees and as leaders, we should be striving for happier employees because we don't have direct lines with the customers. You know what I mean? So we create process and leadership that attaches to the people that are that next tier down, and then those people integrate with the customers. You know what I mean?
Right. Especially like in metropolitan areas like Pittsburgh, for example.
Yeah.
Sometimes of the day it might be a 30-minute drive to get, for example, like for us, it's from the South Hills to the North Hills, half
Yep.
hour.
Yep.
Other times of day during rush hour, that half-hour drive could easily turn into an hour plus.
Yep.
And when, if you're running late for an appointment or, whatever it might be, it just makes it, like you said, so much uh, easier. And the way that we think about it is we look at our 5 days, that we typically do estimates, Monday through Friday. And we try to sort of pick, those 5 zip codes, 5 or 6 that we want to be in, and try as best as we can to match up the zip code to the day of the week. So Mondays we'll hit this zip code, Tuesdays we'll hit this one, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and so on. And
Prevent
that way,
excess ping ponging.
right,
Yeah.
because, I'm sure you talk to guys as well who they might have an estimate that's an hour east, and so they drive an hour east, and then they have an estimate from their house would be an hour west, and so that then becomes a 2-hour drive, and then they have to drive back home or check on job sites.
Yep.
Tightening the radius, like you said,
Then
it
there's some
almost
service software out there that helps like route optimizations and stuff like that. There's a few CRMs that have that built in, and there's even standalone solutions. But you know, we've even been playing with just using like chat gpt prompts, you know what I mean, and like you can tell it what your schedule is for this week and where those locations are, and you can ask it for like the best, like you can just be talking to it like your appointment center can be talking to chat gpt throughout the day, feeding it new appointments, and it'll just have a log and it'll just tell you the best times to put them in,
yeah,
which is
that's a beautiful
which is
tool.
a super easy way, and like 20 bucks a month for chat gpt, and just have a thread for like appointment scheduling, and it just always knows your week. It's super easy.
Right, and that's a big thing too, like, with differentiating factor, the tech and the AI and the systems and all of that, feedback loop is super, super valuable. And because we're operating, with multiple companies across multiple states, it just makes it become that much better, that much quicker than if we were just testing something, on a individual company by company level, which we do. Different markets are different, but on the macro, we can get a lot better in a much shorter period of time.
For sure. I mean, that's been one of our advantages as an agency. We've got well over 100 clients, and you look at like that Google data, Google Ads, and LSA, and business profile, and web SEO data, and all this stuff, and you can kind of see like you can do like different tests in different areas, and you do enough of these, and you start to see like some things are kind of location specific, but some things are just not. They're just universally true no matter what you do. And so like you can extrapolate that and like, here's my base level plan that I'm going to do no matter what the location is. And then I'll play with these other little things because they may tweak a little bit based on the location.
Yeah,
I
no,
find
it's
that's super interesting.
as a baseball fan, baseball player growing up, and I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates season ticket holder. They're not a very good team, but I enjoy going to the games.
Hey,
Uh,
dude, my local team is a Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, man. You're doing better than me.
right, right. But I love numbers. I love data, love dashboards, KPIs, all of that. And it's obviously important to take numbers and then relationships and bring the two and two together. But you can't have a good process if you're not measuring that process and having something to measure it up against. And
Are
the
you
more
a fan of
data we
are
have,
you
the
a fan
better
of
we get.
are you a fan of the EOS model from Traction?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Like I think like the big takeaway from that book that I got was like, every department should have like, a handful of KPIs, like no more than 5, but more than 1. And we tend to average about 3 per department. And then we build it into a scorecard, and it gives us a number, and we will set rules on our scorecard, be green if it's a healthy number, orange if it's like borderline, and a red if it's an unhealthy number. And then it allows us to like quickly discuss and talk about those things, in those periodic meetings, whatever length they are.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. We have the 6 pillars, 5 KPIs in each pillar,
Yep.
30 total KPIs that we're tracking, and where it gives us a grade in real time, right? So if we're really struggling, for example, with our business systems in Boston, well, then our focus is going to be on how can we improve our business systems in Boston. Whereas if we're crushing it, with our marketing in Michigan, not that we get complacent and don't try to constantly evolve, but it doesn't become as much of a we really need to focus on this area. And that's the thing too with a lot of companies is you sort of have a hunch and an idea of what's going well and what's not going well, but to actually have a dashboard where you can see that, you confirm that with real numbers and real data is game changing because most of the time the hunch is confirmed, but it makes things feel a lot more manageable and easier when it's there. You can see it and then create a game plan to fix those trouble areas.
Yeah, I agree. I think the risk though, and where one of the things that we end up coaching the most on with clients is what is a KPI versus just a data point, right? So I think especially in the contracting space, like probably not for you because you like went to business school. And while I didn't major in it, I did take some college level business classes. And like the idea behind like a KPI versus just one of the myriad of numbers that you can find in QuickBooks or Google Ads or whatever other system you're in. Like Google Ads has hundreds of data points. It's nuts. And so very often what we'll have is we'll have clients that will like they think this one data point is like that's the most important data point, and they'll just harp on it and like why is it off or why is it this or why is it that? And it's not always the right data point to be doing that on, you know?
Mhm.
Like with finance, I mean, it's I'm not sure which ones you do, but I'm sure it's revenue and gross profit, net profit, at least those three.
Yeah.
There's whatever other ones you have. Those are super, super, almost unarguable numbers that you should be measuring. Like every business should be measuring those three. But then you start going into like marketing. Like, what's the most important things in marketing? What's the most important thing in lead nurturing? What about like selling? You know what I mean? Like I've got my opinions on it, but like what I can promise you that it's not this obscure number on a marketing dashboard that you're looking at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For me, like for marketing, it's like total spend. Um, I don't really track like impressions and stuff. That's like this is not a KPI for me. I look at total spend, I look at total leads generated and total appointments. And then I can look at, from that I can extrapolate cost per appointment, cost per, cost for all that. And then you can take a look at like the revenue that comes in against that channel and you can see ROI or cost of marketing and stuff. For me, that's it. Like I think that like looking at Facebook ads and looking at like view times or impression rates or click through rates or comment rates, like it's arbitrary. You might have, maybe you think like it's supposed to have this like click through rate, but it doesn't, but it's still wildly profitable. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
all of those other data points sometimes are like intermediary and one of them may be low, but the next one may be like really high and may offset it and it just doesn't matter. I was chatting with a client recently and they were talking about like quality score in Google Ads, and that's a really weird little metric, and it's one that I think is very wildly misunderstood. But like, what'll happen with that is it'll try to judge the keyword, and then in the ad copy, if that keyword exists in the ad copy, and then if it exists in the landing page too. And that works for a lot of keywords, but some keywords are not very grammatically correct. So they're next to impossible to put in an exact match point in the ad or the landing page without sounding like a robot. And so you end up having close but not perfect. Well, then that keyword's going to have a low quality score. But most of the time, those keywords that are low quality score are the ones that are actually the best performers.
Probably.
Like painter near me, try to work that into a sentence.
You
You know what I mean? It's not natural. It's like, "Hey, if you're searching for painter near me," dude, it's just not something. It's not the way we talk. It's
No.
the way we search, but it's not the way we talk. And so like that keyword will be crap on a quality score. And loads of other examples would be crap. And if that's your KPI, you might be misinformed because like you still could, now don't get me wrong, you could still be bad, but we have lots of campaigns where like quality scores are like abysmal on some of those keywords, not like every keyword, but those type of keywords will be like really bad, like a 1 or a 2.
Those are
Yet those same keywords are the most profitable keywords in the entire campaign. And so it's like, I think like in order to like even pick the KPIs, you have to have enough knowledge to understand what is the key performance indicator, because that's really the notion of that is the key performance indicator, not every performance indicator.
right. And there can be for those that like numbers and like data, like myself, the challenge
And
that you said there is, okay, we can measure anything and everything, right? Especially when you get into the marketing side. But drilling down what are those important things and what are sort of the vanity metrics that those
well,
vanity metrics are often symptoms of what the KPIs are versus
the other way
actually what
around.
is important to look at.
Yeah.
And for us, I mean, the metrics that we track are very, very similar. Ultimately, customer acquisition cost, cost per estimate, and then what our return on ad spend is in a given channel.
Yeah.
The rest are great to look at, but impressions don't equal dollars.
They don't,
Click-through
not at
rate
all.
don't equal
So,
dollars.
so like rankings don't actually equal dollars either. I have some clients who are like, well, why am I not position one every time? Because like in like Google ads, in SEO, you can't promise it at all. But in Google ads, you could bid enough money to make you position one all the time. But it would be an absurd amount of money. And so like sometimes like the click-through rate, just anecdotal examples, like the click-through rate between position one and position two on a Google ads is splitting hairs. It's almost non-existent. They're two is barely worse than one,
Yeah.
right? Because they're like just right on top of each other. And maybe one's like 50.1, the other's 49.9. Like it's really almost the same. But the cost to be a position one versus position two is normally 2, 3 to 4x higher. And so it's like, dude, I'd rather be a position two because I'll have almost identical amount of leads at a fraction of the cost, which means that my cost per lead is way down. But then you'll have clients that are like, well, but I want to be position one. I'm like, well, great. When you're a Geico, do it. For now, don't. you know, that like, and then just goes back to the KPIs. Like, is that really the metric that matters? I don't believe it is.
No, I mean, the metrics again are what actually converts into paying customers. And sort of ignoring, not completely, but by and large, ignoring the others, that, like we said, are more vanity than anything.
I don't know. I almost feel like sometimes these marketing dashboards like intentionally over convolute them, you know? Because I mean, there really are hundreds and hundreds of data points in Google Ads, and there's a smaller fraction, but still a lot in Facebook ads too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then you get to something like LSA, and there's like two numbers. I'm like, that's awesome. Thank you.
Right.
Well, three
Right.
because there's
Simple.
revenue and then two percentages, but it's like really, really, really simple to understand. But I mean, I think people do that in other areas too. You know, um, you like for lead nurture, the big thing I look for is like speed to lead and then phone answer rate. Those are huge.
Yeah.
And then set rate. I mean, it's not really that complicated. Did you answer the phone? Did you message back or call back a lead or phone call if it was missed? How fast did that take? And then what's the percentage of getting people on the calendar?
Yeah.
You
Again,
know?
those are what then get into leading to actual dollars. And,
Exactly.
ultimately, all KPIs should lead into that. Like we get into HR, for example, and looking at what are the KPIs to track on the HR side, which is, tends to be a little bit more abstract than like the
Yep.
direct marketing side.
Yep.
We look at things such as turnover rate, right? How, what does our turnover rate look like? We look at things like how long is the average, painter going to be staying on board with us, over a period of time. We also take a look at things in terms of like how long does it typically take us, to get to raising somebody in terms of their pay.
Like
Uh,
the promotion cycle, basically.
the promotion cycle, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And looking at those things again, you think about turnover. Turnover is very, very expensive. Having people that
I love that one because it's more expensive than most people think. Way more expensive than people think.
right, and it's detrimental to quality, it's detrimental to team morale, it's detrimental to a lot of different areas, and it's really a hidden cost that doesn't necessarily always show up on the P&L, but it definitely shows up in all the other areas of the business, regardless of if you're spending money, for example, like boosting job postings and things like that.
Yeah. I actually think it does show up in a P&L, and maybe just not in the ways that people think. So, like, turnover is gonna increase like, kinda like the when we're talking about the radius, like, if we decrease the radius, the obvious things is I maybe decrease some gas, right? Because 'Cause I'm
Yeah.
just driving a little bit less. And another obvious thing is, like, I'm concentrating my marketing into a smaller circle. That's really, really obvious. But, like, the employee satisfaction, not as obvious, but very easy to measure. And like the review satisfaction from customers is just a trickle down is one layer down from that. And then you think about like we started talking about like your vehicle maintenance will go down because instead of driving an hour and a half radius, you're driving 45-minute radius, right? So like your vehicle maintenance, tire changes, oil change, that shows up on a P&L though,
Yeah.
right? So now it's like one of the first client I got convinced to do this like years ago, like their vehicle maintenance went down by like 75%. In other words, it was a quarter of the vehicle maintenance cost annually than they were spending when they have a bigger radius. So we're from an hour and a half radius to a 45-minute radius, and it wasn't half; it was a quarter.
Great.
And that's measurable. I mean, it's not like hey, driving radius KPI shows up in your P&L, but it does show up in that place. And I think for like employees, like yeah, you have to your cost of recruitment will go up a little bit. That's the most obvious one, right? Because you lose an employee, you get another employee. You'll have time spent and maybe dollars on Indeed for ads or whatnot. But the other thing that like I think does show up on a P&L is like job profitability. Like, because when you have newer employees that are less trained or the morale is lower, what do you have? You have more job site errors, you have more callbacks, you have more. And so like you'll tend to have less happy customers. You'll have maybe overages on hours estimate. Maybe you thought this project was going to take you like 3 days and 100 man hours, and now it takes you 10% more or
Yeah.
whatever. That hurts and it does affect your bottom line because you probably priced it based on the crew that you just had, and now you got a couple new people in, and it hurts, and you will, and all of a sudden, like you're not hitting your gross profit margins because you had to pay people a little bit more on the job, or someone spilt some paint, you know what I mean? Like I think it
And
does.
that's the thing, like, when I say it doesn't necessarily show up on the P&L, it
It's
absolutely
not an
does.
obvious show up. Is
Right,
what I
but it's not like a line item, for example, that says,
Yeah.
turnover cost us $10,000 this year. Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like the vehicle maintenance thing that goes down is not like a it's not an area reduction line item in your QuickBooks, but it is like in a few other places. It's like, yeah, this is going to improve. This is going to get better. The same thing. I heard this a long time ago. Like, it costs less to keep an existing customer than to get a new one. And I heard that, and the sales guy was like, oh, that really makes sense, right? So, like, if you can extend the lifetime value of a customer, resell, increase project size, all that stuff, anything that you would do with that is great. But then I also think that it also applies to employees. Like, it is far, far easier to retrain an existing employee than to get a new one. And so, like, for I'm not sure how you guys operate, I'm curious, but for us, like, the biggest thing that's, like, really the only thing that's an immediate fire is doing something in direct opposition of our core values. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And other than that, if it's like a skill-based thing, it's probably a process or training issue, not a person issue. As long as the person's on the same wavelength as far as, like, morale and core values and all that kind of stuff, as long as they want to be there, as long as those things are true, I'll retrain skills till the cows come home. You know what I mean? Versus replacing an employee.
Right, because you have, time that you're losing in terms of productivity, you have the costs associated with recruiting, you have potential morale change on job sites with inserting an unknown variable in there,
Yep.
and all of that is absolutely true. And the way that we like to think about turnover, because the painting industry does tend to be a transient industry. People come, people go,
This year.
and the challenge is when you have painters is really twofold. You need to prevent them from leaving to go work for another painting company, and you need to prevent them from going and starting their own painting company, right?
Yep.
Which definitely doesn't exist in other areas of the economy, but very much so does exist in the painting industry because of the relatively low
Yeah, it's harder
barrier.
to go start another JP Morgan, right?
Right.
You know? Yeah, I mean, if you're a financial analyst for JP Morgan, you might start a little private firm, but you're not gonna start another JP Morgan, you know?
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. You're not gonna in a whole bunch of different areas, you're not gonna be able to
Sure.
parlay that
Hospitals.
into.
Yeah.
So what we have to look at is what can we do, especially given that you ask for again some differentiating things like on a holding company level to decrease our turnover as much as possible. So a few things that we do to do that. Thing number one is for all of our employees across the entire company, from leadership down to painters, we provide them equity in the holding company, shares that they have that
Amazing.
act as an equity tracking right. That as long as they stay with the company, that equity is in their name. So when we issue quarterly dividends, they're receiving the quarterly distributions that
Perfect.
benefit them directly. In the
Awesome.
future, when we exit, they're going to get paid directly from that exit, which is not going to be an insignificant amount of money. The
Yeah.
other big things that we
It'll be
do that
based on the amount of shares that they own, I assume, you know?
exactly, yeah. So if we get bought out at
If I own 5%, I'll get paid out 5% or whatever, you know?
exactly, yeah.
Mhm.
From there, we look at, okay, what are some other benefits that we can offer beyond the equity piece that most other painting companies can't offer? And something that we can do is offer health insurance. We offer health insurance that includes medical, dental, vision to all of our employees from top to bottom. We offer a 401k matching program. Our 401k matching program, we match up to 7%, which you're typically not going to find.
Pretty That's pretty high.
Yeah. And so all of those things combined, and then the last big thing that we do is our two more professional type positions beyond painter. You have project managers and estimators. For
Yeah.
all of our painters that come in, we want to plan with them. Hey, do you want to be a painter forever? Or do you want to have a legitimate path towards project management, towards sales and estimating, and
Yeah.
put them on a track there? And on a holding company level, what we do on a weekly basis is we host continuing education seminars for painters specifically that are looking to educate themselves on the sales side, educate themselves on the project management side,
Awesome.
and give them the skill set that they need to be promoted internally. It gives them, rather than, you're the painter making 15, $20 an hour that's typically getting paid cash under the table with no benefits to speak of. We want to create careers for people that they can be proud of and that they can support their families with. That's why our starting wage for all of our painters across the board, we go no lower than $25 an hour, all W-2. We don't do the whole 1099 trick where they're really W-2 employees, but we classify them as 1099s.
I can't believe how many people do that, dude. It's
So many people.
I mean, look, there's nothing wrong with a 1099 employee when they're truly a 1099 employee. I think maybe it's partially just some of it's ignorance, but sometimes people are doing it deliberately.
Yeah, just to save a little bit of money that comes with the payroll taxes, which it's very easy if you actually say, okay, we're paying $25 an hour to a painter. He's a W-2 employee. Well, our actual cost is not going to be $25 an
No,
hour.
because you got the payroll burden, because you got the state unemployment, federal unemployment,
Social
Medicare,
security,
Social
yeah,
Security, and then work comp, you know what I mean? You have to pay all that.
right. And just factor that into how you're pricing, have your prices reflect that and you'll still make your margins.
Well, they
But
call it payroll burden. It's a pretty common number to know in your business. It's like, here's payroll costs, like what I actually like the paychecks are, but here's the payroll burden.
yeah,
You know, for us, that's a pretty low because we're admin, like it's all computer work. When you get out
right,
in the field, work comp goes up. So like there's going to be more than that. Like roofers have a notoriously high burden, because work comp rates for roofs can be, depending on the state, can be 30 to 50 cents on the dollar. So that would take a, $30 an hour employee and change it to a $45 an hour employee
you
really
could,
like really quickly. But for painting, I'm not sure what your work comp rates are, but last time I checked them in Florida, they're not that bad.
no, we're typically between like 18 to 25%, depending on
Yeah.
the,
Yeah, that's about what it is here, I think.
yeah,
I mean, it depends on longevity, like, if you get a work comp policy and you're issue free for a while, it tends to, like, trickle down just like an auto policy or
right.
something, but, you know, that's about what we see.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's also one of the other benefits too of the holding company relationship is just the idea of economies of scale, right? We're able to negotiate better insurance rates. We're able to negotiate. We have a direct partnership with Sherwin-Williams where we're able to negotiate lower than the typical, all contractors get discounts, but we're able to negotiate an even steeper discount because of the
Because you're one holding company with a bunch of
collective
paint
buying
companies.
power.
Yeah.
And when we can do that, that increases our gross margins, increases our net margins. We have more profits
So
to distribute then to everybody
Mhm.
throughout the company. Whole litany of benefits that the idea of economies of scale come into play when you're operating on the holding company level.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's actually one I wouldn't have thought of, but I mean, it makes sense. I mean, franchises have that same benefit, you
Yeah,
know?
no, they
Yeah,
definitely do.
but in this case, it's like multiple brand names under one holding company. It's essentially like a franchise without the same name everywhere, you know?
Correct. It's
You get the
a
you get some of those same system benefits just without actually being the same brand in every city.
correct. And we value like when we're looking for potential acquisition partners, we're very intentional about like, are we engaging with a company that has a good brand and a good local reputation? And
Mhm.
that's one of the most important things when we're looking through a potential partner. And we're quite picky about the companies that come on board. Our number right now is we typically say no 12 times before we say yes that 13th time to potential people that are interested in joining our group.
That's
Uh,
that's not just for context here, that's not that different for me as an agency. I
yeah,
tell I tell way more people no than not either. Could be mindset, could be all sorts of things, but, like, yeah, I think any business, you know I don't think painters should be as scrutinous as we are, but B2B, you have to be a lot more scrutinous than B2C, I think.
oh, of course you do. Of course you do.
Yeah.
I definitely learned that back in the sort of consulting marketing company that I was running.
Yeah.
Initially, I made the mistake of thinking like the painter, I'm going to go anywhere and everywhere, right? Whoever wants to pay me 300, 400, $500 a month, I have my Stripe or Square account ready to take the payment and we'll get going. And, the issue there obviously was, well, if a painter who's making $60,000 in revenue is paying me $350 a month, and he thinks that's going to fundamentally change his business beyond simply, coaching, uh, it just wasn't going to be the case. And I learned that very
See,
quickly within my first really 4, 5, 6 months doing it that I needed to sort of go back to the painter mindset in terms of shrinking, not the radius, but shrinking like who is
that's
my
it. That's
ideal
it. Yeah,
customer going to be? Because the wide net is going to present the same exact issues as the wide radius is going to present,
of
for
course.
painters.
Yep. Yep, yep, 100%. I'm super big, and we even do it for our painting clients, but we definitely do it in in my any of my B2B companies that I own. And that is a very, very specific um brand story, a very specific avatar, and a very specific, clearly defined problem with a very specific offer to solve that problem. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just a painter. That's just too broad. You know what I
Super broad,
mean?
right? There's quarter
Yeah,
million of them that exist.
exactly. And that's just the painting companies. If you talk about all painters, it's yeah. And I heard something from Nick Slavic on a I think it was a podcast I did with him like last year or something. It might have been somebody else's podcast. I can't remember because I've heard Nick Salvik a lot. But he was talking about a stat that they measured at the PCA, which I think is a really, really interesting number. The average paint company in America has 1.1 employees.
Yeah, it's just himself,
Think
right?
about that. You know what I mean? It means that nearly everyone is just a solopreneur, and some of the companies have like 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 employees, you know?
Yeah, I
And
mean, it makes sense. It's also like $40 billion market, 250,000 contractors. You do the math there, comes out to $150,000 top line for the average painting company.
correct.
Um, 150,000 top line. If you're bringing, let's say if you're a solo guy, you're probably having higher margins because you're not necessarily factoring in your labor as an outside expense.
Yep.
But it's a very big market with a lot of really small time players. And that's why private equity is getting involved in home services in general. It's sort of a cottage industry still with, guys that go around in their truck and they might have a couple buddies in the summer that help them when they get busy. But aside from that, they're just painters. But in a $40 billion market, you look at broader home services being significantly bigger than that, not being consolidated. It's the natural progression of markets for private equity to get involved, consolidate the market, take market share, um,
And,
and
and
create something of
there's
value.
lots of them. Are you familiar with Cody Sanchez?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of
So
a
she's been buying up a
there.
lot. I mean, I think when she first got started, it was mostly like laundromats and some other things, but more recently, she's been buying up some home services businesses and stuff. I've been watching her for a little while, and it's interesting to see that like almost completely passive laundromat to this very hyperactive. There's a lot of management layers that happen in a home service company.
Yeah.
Marketing has to happen, phones have to get answered, emails have to be responded to, schedules have to be like there's a lot of communication loops. Whereas a laundromat's like one dude can service a laundromat, you know?
If that, I mean, you don't really
If
need
not, it's
someone.
probably part-time, right? It's probably like a few hours a week to like fill the vending machines, take the quarters, deposit them in the bank, and you're done, right? It's really easy. Maintenance every here and there. So like the labor component end of that versus that, I thought it was an interesting transition, and I think it shows the future potential for people like you to get in that. If really big investors are coming in with private equity money like her, because she manages a lot of companies, right?
Yeah.
So you see someone like her into this space, you're like, that makes you think, you know. But I do think like for me, not only is it about the holding because I 100% agree with that, but I think more than anything it's these home services trades, and it's primarily because they're one man shops, right? And one man shops can't do a lot. There is a like it's a laughing stock of lack of professionalism.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything from lack of systems to uh crazy personalities and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I know you've talked to a lot of painters, but like there's some very negative and angry individuals that are like, blame the world on the lack of success and just like it's just the myriad of things. And I think what I appreciate from what you do is coming in with like a professional stack of operating systems, if you will. Like you're basically just professionalizing the business. You know
That's
what I
what it
mean?
is. Yeah.
That's
It's
really what it is. I mean, like there's all sorts of other buzzwords, but you're basically saying, here's marketing, let's make it consistent and professionalize. Here's this customer service, here's this HR, these other systems. We have, KPIs and processes and checklists and sheets and training, and we're just going to professionalize. We're going to be like any other professionalized company. We're just going to do it with paintbrushes, you
right.
know?
It's one of the last industries, home services in general, one of the last industries in the economy that is still super unprofessional. not
I agree.
consolidated. And that's why it's ripe for outside investment to come in, professionalize, consolidate. And, when we think about like uh, the curve in terms of product or service adoption, we're definitely in the early adoption phase of sort of this movement of outside money and private equity involvement in home services. I think specifically in painting, maybe less so in HVAC, plumbing,
Yeah,
roofing,
yeah,
but the
and
early
roofing
adopters,
roofing and remodeling too seems to have a little bit more uptick.
yeah, and the reason to why, like, for example, HVAC and electric, there's a ton of involvement there, landscaping to a more limited extent, is because those business models can be built around recurring maintenance
MRR,
work,
MRR, yeah.
right? You can sign maintenance agreements with people that you can go into next year already with $1 million, $2 million in business there, and you build that as a foundation. Whereas the painting industry, it is, you by and large project to project in terms of you need to constantly have that marketing machine and sales machine, going to create that long term value. Now, once you have it there, it can get close to being on an autopilot, but still needs work and effort in there. But I do think, and we've already started to see a little bit, again, with how big the industry is, it's just a matter of time until the dominoes start falling here. And again, the early adopters are going to be the biggest winners in this. There will certainly be winners later, down the road, but it's an exciting opportunity, certainly for guys that have built something for themselves that want to be able to maximize what they've built to an even bigger level than they could have done on their own.
Yeah, and for context and to tie back into some of your early stories, I don't know if you know this about me, but I used to be a painter a long time ago too, and I grew up in a painter household. I'm just a little bit older than you,
Okay.
so I did this in like the late '80s and '90s, like and so like I saw the trades at where a lot of the guys that are like in those the 40s and 50s now, like they started painting like when I did, and they
Yeah.
are still painting and they learned in that era. So I did it and then stepped away from it and then came back to it on the marketing side because I was in the military for a while. So like I was in painting and then not in painting and then back in it, right? On a When I came back, I was on a different side of it. And so it was interesting though, is like I grew up in this kind of free for all, paying people under the table, people showing up drunk and high, everyone showing up late,
Yeah.
customers always got the short end of the stick. It was Russian roulette as a customer trying to find a contractor that wouldn't screw you over. You never knew what you were going to get. Schedules would change all the time. It was just the wild, wild west, man. It was absurd, you
Yeah.
know, the kind of things that people would do and thought they were okay. And so I think that to your notion, like, we're starting to see more private equity. And yes, that pursuit, but the professionalism bit in there. What's interesting is one of the things that I tend to see, and I see it at least a handful of times a week, and I have for years, is someone will come to me in this like 1 to 3 man shop and they'll be like, man, I've been doing this for X amount of years, insert some number greater than five,
Uh-huh.
right? 10, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And this whole time it's all been word of mouth. And now I can't get anyone to do anything. And I just don't know what to do. Right. And the sad reality is like just marketing alone isn't even going to fix it.
No.
Because you get there, there's so many mindset problems and operating system problems. Like, we've had clients, we've had to put a whole bunch of filters here because of this. So we've taken clients like that in years past, and then you implement a winning marketing playbook, and then they don't answer the phone and then blame you on marketing.
Okay.
Or they answer the phone and set an appointment, and they email proposals 3 days after when they told the client they'd get it to them, and instead of having a presentation in-house, and they don't wanna learn how to hire people, and they treat their employees like shit, and they argue with customers on site, and it's like, "Dude, marketing ain't fixing that."
No.
You know what I mean?
Why it's
And
one piece to the overall puzzle of
yeah,
business.
yeah, and so that's what I like about business systems. For me, that was a big thing that I learned from that book, Traction. I read it, like, coming out of the Air Force and stuff like that, like, quite a while ago, and, and a couple other similar books where it's like, it's not There are multiple gears in this machine that we call business. It's not just one lever. Yeah, marketing is normally the first lever we push on,
Mhm.
right? You have to spend money to get leads. You have to get leads to have appointments. You have to have appointments to have sales. You have to have sales to put a painter in the house. Yes, but there's like it's normally like multiple of these systems have to kind of improve at once, you know, and that becomes hard for someone that's stuck in their ways from 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's
Yeah.
really hard. You're asking them to change a lot of deep, patterns of behavior.
Yeah. Whereas like most of the companies, I mean, the four that we have right now, um, have all started within the last 10 years, right? They're not sort of 20
Not
years.
quite that old. Yeah.
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 Right. So they've built something and have had started to have some success, and are pushing in the right direction, but sort of maybe stuck at a certain level and need help breaking through. But they want to break through. And that's the
Yeah.
big thing. Whereas like you were saying, if you're dealing with somebody that's been doing it for 20, 30, 35 years, it's gonna be very difficult to teach that old dog the new tricks.
Mhm.
Um and just a reality of the situation, which is why, we're so, particular about who is the person that is going to be running the show. And that's honestly like the best deals, I believe, have the best people with, a good foundation to build off of. But I would much rather have a superstar person with a so-so business than an awesome business on paper, but with, a crap leader at the top. And that's sort of
I couldn't agree more.
a
Agree more.
reality that sort of learn as you go through it. Our first deal that we did, company Supreme Painters in Boston, uh, was run by two guys, a Brazilian guy and a Honduran. Sort of ran the business together since 2012. Have had success doing it, doing a couple $1 million a year. A year ago, which coming up on 2 years now, it was early 2024. The Brazilian guy sold part of his business to the Honduran guy and sort of transferred a lot of the business and day to day responsibilities there. So the numbers on paper looked fantastic looking back because it was mainly the Brazilian who pushed things forward and had the good business. But there were just a litany of issues with the sort of new leadership running things that caused a lot of issues for us, and we had to fire the guy running it and buy his part of the business back. A whole bunch of issues in terms of pushback on systems we were trying to implement from like every single software we tried to put in place to streamline our tech stack. Didn't like it, didn't want to do it. Was insistent on paying guys under the table, was insistent on doing things the way that he wanted to do things. In fact, there was an issue with, some theft there as well. But the business looked awesome
That's
on paper, right? It was a slam dunk on paper, fantastic. Everything was there. Just the leadership wasn't aligned, and we've transitioned that business into a good spot now with better leadership. But it was definitely, one of those things and mistakes that you make and that you learn from, and realize, okay, we need to focus on people first. Numbers have to be there, but really numbers second, people first.
Yeah, I agree. And we didn't talk about that in business leadership. We kind of talked about that with employees a minute ago,
Yeah.
right? An employee that's got a great mindset and aligns with values and all the other things is just a decent human being that doesn't have a certain knowledge set. Dude, we'll teach them the knowledge. And I'd rather have that than someone that knows a lot and is just not a good human,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that applies at every level, including, potentially investors and any partners that you have, but also like the owners of the companies that you hold, like everything down the line. Like you just want to have great humans involved.
Yeah, and that's really what it's about too. Like one of our, I guess, selling points is entrepreneurship can be a rather lonely journey and a lonely experience, right? There's nobody, unless you have like good mentors around you. There's typically nobody that you call when you're worried about making payroll on Friday, or you're getting callbacks from jobs, or work isn't coming in. And it all falls on your shoulders, and that's can definitely be scary and lonely and isolating. And what we do, and one of the big things we're intentional about, is creating community with our contractors in the group. So we have weekly, calls with everybody together. We have a group chat with all of the, sort of leaders of the companies. Memorial Day weekend, we brought all of the leaders of the companies to Pittsburgh, took them all to a Pirates game. We did
Love it.
like a walk around the city that we did. We had sort of meetings and stuff back at our offices, did pizza, dinner, right? And creating a community of like-minded, ambitious people, and sort of, like, for example, the PCA is a great event,
Yeah.
where people get together, ambitious, like-minded painters across the country, and it's sort of an energizer of sorts, right? And we're trying to create just a more intimate version of that on a smaller level, where we have a community of people, so that if there's a question about anything from business to job site to marketing to hiring, fire, whatever it is, they can call me, text me, or call our guy in Michigan, call our guy in Oklahoma, right? They have that built-in trust with each other, where we're all rowing in the same boat, we're all on the same team, same goal, same mission, and we all genuinely like each other, which is important. And that's because we were so particular about the right culture fit and bringing that culture into the group. Something that we've done to this point that I'd like to see continue as we get bigger is when we are considering bringing a potential acquisition in, we not only do our due diligence and everything, but when we're ready to sort of make that next step, we have them sit down in sort of our group meeting that we have once a week, and let the other guys, get to know them and sort of how they run their business, uh, and all the different aspects of it. And then we go back to our guys in private and say, hey, what do you think about this company? Think it's a good fit for us to move forward with. And if, we get a no on that, then we're not going to move forward. And, it might be a little bit more difficult to do at scale. Like if we had 15 companies and we needed 15 yeses to move forward on something, it's a little
Yeah.
bit easier now, but I definitely want to continue to do that, to some extent, as we, get bigger over the coming years.
I um I love that you do that. And I think that you said something a second ago that I think is undersaid and underdiscussed. Um es- Especially among men particularly, but the pressures, the loneliness, the anxiety at times, the stress that we as business owners, heads of households, heads of businesses, leaders face. There's very few people that we can talk about that with, you know. Um, I have to go on podcasts like this to talk about that with other people because, like, even in my own circle, like all of my top friends that are here, that in my area, not one of them owns a business.
Yeah.
And so they'll be like, "Oh, well, my boss did this," and I'm like, "Cool. I mean, that's awesome. It's not the same pressure that I have. Mine is and not that it's better or worse or anything else. It's just different.
Yeah.
And unless you're sitting down with other like-minded people, that's one of the reasons I love going to things like PCAs and doing podcasts like this. And I'm going out to Mike Gore Hickman's event in Arizona later this fall and things like that. I love being part of those kind of things because you do get an entire room full of nothing but business owners and everyone there. Even if one guy does one kind of trade or another kind of trade, it's almost irrelevant at that point because you all feel the same pressures. You all know what it's like to have a tight financial pay period. You know what it's like to lose employees, to have mad customers, to have people call out, like all of those day-to-day things that happen in businesses. We've all felt them all, and if you're just an employee of another company, you don't, you
No.
know, and it's different. And it is, you're right. It's very lonely. We could do a podcast just on
Oh,
that. Yeah.
no,
It's
you
a, it's
certainly,
a, it's a, it's a, it's a huge topic. I think that's like under discussed, honestly.
and it's tough too, because it's not like, if you're in a specific area, it's not like you're gonna call up the, other painting company in your area and
I
complain
know.
about what's going on.
Yeah, and you complain about them, and then they just, like, most of the time, they'll just mock you. Like, it's also tough to make friends and with other businesses, especially if they're competing, that are true friends
Yeah.
and not the type of person that will be your friend to your face and then do the opposite behind your back. That's hard too, and I feel like that actually keeps a lot of people even more closed in than we already are isolated, And I think that it's something that we could change. There's that cliche, we compete at the bottom and we collaborate at the top. But that's a mindset. Like when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, like no paint company shared anything with anybody
Hmm.
ever.
Yeah.
Like ever, ever, ever. I remember going to my first PCA event in the late 90s. It was surprising how small that event was.
Uh-huh.
Like the PCA event that I just went to in Colorado was like a casino show. Giant screens and amazing lighting and a sound system and video production, and like you're like, dude. And like I went, it was like, barely had a coffee machine in the back with a couple round tables. And it was
Yeah.
just, and no one wanted to actually share anything. No one wanted to open up. No one wanted to talk about anything because, like, what if you tell your secrets, they're just going to
Mm,
go steal them. And like that was the mentality that it
mm,
was. Right. So, like,
mm.
those human behaviors are real slow to change. And I'm happy to be around when it is changing. And I think it's a lot of people. I think it's agencies and coaches that are on the education side. I think it's holding companies like you and Aleph and a couple of the other good ones, that are on the education side. There's a few people like you got Tanner Mullen in the space that's
Yeah.
really big in education, Michael Hickman, Lucas from Ford Media, like like all these people that they pour into this education at such a high level that it becomes almost contagious. And now, like the industry that I was in when I was a kid is just not the same. Yeah, we're still painting walls and doors, but it's not the same. Like it's staggeringly different than it was in the 90s for the good, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, sort of
And
that.
I want to see it keep continuing. There's lots of money to be made. There's lots of professionals to have. We can improve lives. We can do things like 401ks in healthcare and W-2 salaries. We don't have to pay people under the table. We can have career paths. We can treat people right. We can give people PTO and still run a profitable company, you know? And in the 90s, if you would have said any of that, you would have been laughed at,
Yeah.
you know? And so I'm happy to see where it's going, and I'm happy to see people like you be a part of that.
Yeah. No, it's definitely encouraging, and specifically like the online circles and everything, which
Yeah.
might be part of the reason why people have been able to be more open, for
I
example,
think
with
so.
each other,
And
the
that's a huge thing because I mean, Facebook didn't exist in the 90s,
yeah.
And even when Facebook first did its first 10 years of Facebook groups and that kind of culture didn't exist, this is a relatively recent thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you think
And
about, like, the drip jobs community on Facebook
yeah,
that
new. It's only a few years old.
right, it's new, but it has 200, some thousand members in it
Yeah.
and is
Well,
incredibly
it's like a
active.
quarter million people on there, dude. It's crazy.
Right, and that just shows that there's a deep desire for community and to try to build something, like this
Mhm.
where, again, somebody can go in there and, most of the content is a picture of a job site and how can I fix this? Or how can I do that? But there are definitely some good questions regarding, marketing and finances and hiring and all of that that do pop in there from time.
There's always like that bell curve, and like in any group, there's going to be the people that are pricks. There's going to be the people that like don't engage, but like you get the bell curve in the middle, and most of those conversations and groups like that, like Tanner's group and a few others, Tommy Mello's group and stuff. Like you'll have some of the like kind of dumb questions. Some people are pointed and rude. Some people just don't comment at all. But the large majority that I see, they're helpful. Like, hey, what's the best marketing play? I'm this size. How can I hire people? Or I'm struggling with this. These are thoughtful things, man. And I think it's really cool because one, I hate to run a life where I compare myself to other people. And I think one of the biggest forms of anxiety is when you compare yourself too much to other people,
Yeah.
right? Like I'm never going to be you and you're never going to be me. We could exchange like sometime in the future we might be able to have like digital downloads where I can learn everything and you could learn it right
Right.
like that. Like, almost like the Matrix, right?
Upload
We
your
could we,
consciousness.
we could do that and I still would not be able to be you. You know what I mean? And I think that like it's cool to compare people to see what's possible, to see what options are out there. I think it's a very bad thing when we compare somebody at a level of like I'm not as good, I'm deficient, or the opposite, I'm better than because
Yeah.
you can become a judgmental prick too for somebody that maybe makes less money than you, or maybe you run a $5 million paint company. You know how many people that are in those communities that also like they're running the $3 to $5 million paint companies and they shun at people that are 500,000 and call them stupid for asking a question. That it's not good either way,
No.
you know.
No.
Like, and so I think that it for the most part in those groups, most people are super helpful, super kind, super willing. And I think as long as we reinforce those good behaviors and we call people out when they're making the bad behaviors, I think that it kind of, we all tend to get better. We elevate ourselves as people a little
Yeah.
bit. You know?
No, we definitely do, and, like, I, over the past couple months, have made a concerted effort to try to get in the Drip Drops group every, couple weeks with, some sort of thoughtful question that goes beyond, like, the job sites and asking,
Yep.
stuff about marketing metrics, for example. I think we engaged on one of them
Some marketing
regarding,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think one of our
cost
first
per
comments was,
estimate, for
yeah,
example.
yeah, yeah.
And
Hmm.
I opened up, like, our 4 across the board, what our cost per estimate was, and
Hmm.
I thought that that was a helpful dialogue in there, and,
It is. It is. And I think you could do that. You could do the same thing in HR. You could do the same thing in finance. You can do the same thing in sales. Like, I mean, all of that stuff is helpful and it just elevates people. I think it's fantastic.
right, right, and, the power of being able to communicate with people like that and not have to feel, um, like they're gonna take anything from me, and it's funny because if you engage, like, if a painter meets a painter or landscaper meets a landscaper on the same market, and they ask, "Oh, how's business going?" They're gonna lie to each other 9 times out of 10 in terms of,
Yep.
it's, if they're making $500,000, in reality, they're gonna tell the other guy they're doing $1,000,000 this year, or
There's something that happens online too, though.
yeah. No, I
Maybe
mean, there
maybe not as
definitely
much.
is.
Maybe not as much, but it happens.
I just think the certainly trying to bring down those barriers at least a little bit and become more vulnerable and transparent about what is happening, behind the scenes, because that enables, communities to, provide actual support versus if there's, misleading or, subtle lies, things like that. It can definitely, um, dilute the power of those communities and,
Well,
turn.
I think a lot of times, and again, this goes back to like slow moving human behaviors over years, but like you'll have people that will tell these lies and then they'll get called out. And then that will ultimately make those people stop because they feel embarrassed because they're called out, and then also show the people that it's okay to share the truth. And then like we're socially punishing bad behaviors in these groups, and we're socially rewarding the better behaviors. No, not in every group, not in every group, but in some of these trade groups, we're seeing that. Like I see a large majority of the behaviors being good and very few of the behaviors being bad.
Mhm.
But like there's, if you were to rewind that 5, 10 years ago, it probably would have been the opposite. So we're almost like curating ourselves and just policing ourselves in a kind of a good way. When we see better, when we're around better people, we tend to want to, we mirror, and from body language to patterns of behavior, we tend to mirror people that we're around. That's why they say like you are the top few people that you surround yourself with. That's who you're going to end up being like,
Yeah,
because
sort of
we
middle.
mirror these behaviors like without trying to. We are going to. And so when we get in these groups and we have people that are leaders, like like Tanner and Ellison and Lucas and Mike Hickman and yourself and things like that, we get some of these people that are smart, humble, and willing to share. It opens up that gate and allows other people like, hey, this is okay to be vulnerable for a moment, you know.
Yeah, it's
And I think that's
valuable. It definitely is.
a hugely valuable thing, man.
Now, I'm curious your opinion on sort of the marketing landscape in general, sort of the agency side for painting contractors in general. Definitely run into, a lot of, companies and contractors that sort of cast a negative, light reputation, whatever you might call it, on the agency side. And absolutely, there are great ones out there, such as yourself. But I'm just curious, when you sort of survey the landscape, being intimately involved in the space, what is your opinion on where it's at right now and some of the, things?
That's a great question, and I think this could be a podcast by itself too. Maybe we'll do another one sometime. I'll give you the shorter answer. So I've been in this space for 19 years, and I started in an infomercial agencies where I kind of cut my teeth. I was doing like video scripts and radio and TV production spots, but I was like, it was on the marketing side. I was
Yeah,
doing CTAs for like infomercial products and stuff. So it was definitely marketing. After a couple of years of that, and I did a bunch of freelance stuff at the time too. Like I'd fly around and do consulting and media things and stuff with different various companies. But then like my wife and I, my now wife and I were dating back then. We were like, we want to settle down, have kids, all that stuff. So I needed to to stop traveling. And so I kind of like, let's build an agency. This will be fun. And that went this career. So about 15, 16 years of being like full-time agency space, not working for anybody else, right? But almost 20 years in marketing and three-quarters of that, so like owning my own business, right? And in that time, I've just seen a virtual shit show of different kinds of stories left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And I think that like kind of getting these Facebook groups, they kind of help keep some of the agencies in check. When it first started, like we were never this way. I was brought up with, strong military integrity values and stuff like that. And we always tried to do right. Does that mean we've succeeded every time? No. I have lapsed communications. I have misset expectations. I have missed deadlines. I've missed performances. We've all made errors. I
Yep.
have made errors. I'll continue to make errors. But the integrity for us has always been right since day one. And I think where most people, and especially after 2020, I saw a giant influx after 2020. Same reason, like you had some stuff and pulling some students out of this, that sitting at home playing video games because COVID had all these lockdowns and stuff. So one of the things that happened in 2020 was there was a slew of how to build a digital marketing agency courses that came out.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden overnight, I had 10 times the amount of competition. Now I'm not worried about the competition. Like from a competitor standpoint, that doesn't bother me at all. I've got such a long track record. I've got dozens of national awards. I've worked for over a couple dozen Fortune 500 companies. I've worked for a half a dozen national and international franchises. I've done some really, really big stuff that I'm able to take these giant skills and pull down to working with local or smaller franchise paint companies.
Yeah.
And that's helped. And my wife has been in that journey too. So it's like her and I skills, we co-run this thing, and there's like big boy skills that we're able to put into small company playbooks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kind of like you and your uncle working on these giant franchise companies. You could take some of these big systems and put them in these small companies and have amazing results. So that's one of our skills and one of our superpowers. And there's other companies that created like a niche thing, like Facebook ads agencies is a really big thing. And so we're an all-in-one agency. We do a lot of things. That's really hard because
Mhm.
I have to have where a Facebook ad agency just has Facebook ad people. I have to have Facebook ad people, web people, Google ad people, SEO people, content writing people, graphic design people. It takes a huge army to do this, right? And a lot more interoperability and collaboration and bigger bites of campaigns and whatnot, right? And so generally what I see is I see two camps right now. I see these very new companies that have an incredibly high moral value. And even if they mess up, they're trying to do the right thing and they're going to fail forward, not just, screw people over.
Right.
And like I'd put like, Lucas and that group at Forward Media Marketing. He's very, very new, but he's good and doing good things,
Mhm.
right? But there's other people, and I'm not calling out anyone individually, and I don't think that's
Right, of course.
appropriate. But there are some people that are approaching this from I want to collect a paycheck, not I'm trying to help someone's livelihood or someone's
Yeah.
business grow. And I think when you approach that, when you don't have integrity first, and you don't remember that at the other end of that client is an actual person, there's a family over there. I think you lose a lot. And I think it opens we talked about this a minute ago where like the leader sets the tone, right? If you have a bad leader in a paint company, like all the other things in there are just going to be wrong. And so if you have someone that has misaligned morals and core values at a personal level, I don't care what they put on paper for their company values. If personally their values aren't right,
Mhm.
there's nothing that's going to be great about that. And the hard truth is that like there's more of them than there are the guys of integrity,
Right.
and so our number one core value is integrity. That's like literally, I will fire people if they demonstrate lack of integrity. I don't care if you mess up. If you tried to do right, we're okay, fix it. If you intentfully did wrong or you withheld for you like your self-preservation stuff, you're gone. Like there is no second chances, right?
Yeah.
So, but I don't see that in a lot of agencies, and I think that the second angle of that is from the consumer standpoint that when you're talking to, let's say, two different agencies, and it could be me and somebody else, it could be 2 other people, it doesn't really matter. We're all going to use essentially the same vocabulary. We're all going to use essentially the same vocabulary. There's the same buzzwords. There's SEO and schema and impressions and cost of marketing and it's all the same words, right? And very often, and I think inappropriately, some agencies will focus on attacking the other agency instead of highlighting what they do great.
Yeah.
And I think that that creates these negative connotations where it's like, I have people on a daily basis. I am at least get 20 of these a week where another agency, there's a few of them that are doing this repetitively, but they know who my clients are because it's relatively easy to see through social interactions.
Right.
They'll follow my clients, and what they'll do is they'll look at a campaign, they'll find one thing that may be slightly wrong, right? And we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of KPIs. We talked about that before, right?
Right.
The KPIs are just a data point, right? They'll find a data point, say, hey, these guys are screwing you over because this data point's wrong. And that's not right because every one of our clients has 10% or better cost of marketing, which
Yeah.
is great, right? So that's a 10x ROI. That's like the kind of the goal, right? Is to be around there. Now, don't get me wrong, there's seasonal fluctuations where it might go up. Brand new clients are going to be higher than that, right? Things like that. But if you fast forward up to all of our clients at a 6 month or greater timeline, that metric is true. And so it's like, but we'll have these people that will come in and maliciously like attack one data point or another. But then, and again, I don't care about that to me. Where it hurts is to the customer
Mhm.
because now all of a sudden this contractor who doesn't know anything about marketing thinks maybe this data point is the most important data point in the world now because someone just told them that.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, yeah, that's actually not the most important data point. And so now other agencies that are actually trying to do right now have to reinform and re-educate, and it's a hard loop, right? And so you get these comparisons, and everyone's using these same buzzwords, and the bottom of the end of the day, it's very difficult for a consumer to understand the difference between a good agency and a bad agency. It's very difficult. And what I would say is that anyone looking, first of all, understand that even the best agencies, the agencies in the top 1%, they are going to still have failures. I have failures.
Yeah.
I'll point them out to you openly if you want. I'll tell you who, and they're going to happen, right? But you want to look for someone that's had far more successes than failures, right? And then how did those failures go? Why was it a failure? Why did a client leave? And how did that thing leave? Right? Because a lot of times in the agency space, when clients try to leave an agency, they'll hold their assets hostage. They won't pass over the website, they won't pass
Right.
over the phone numbers or the ad accounts or whatever. And that creates a whole nother level of like IP and potentially asset liabilities and all sorts of other stuff. You want to make sure that you don't hire someone that does that
Right.
ever. And so we don't do that ever. It's the only right way to go. Everything should either be owned by the end client or be in an agreement in the actual contract, say that you'll pass it over. That way that you know your assets are protected. I dozens of times a year, I see people that can't get access to their own Facebook page because an agency won't let them, or an ad account, or a website, or a domain, or an email, or whatever. And it's a sad story. So you've got to protect that and make sure the agency won't do that. So even if things don't go the way that you thought they would, you have an out, you can restart, you know what I mean? And it's okay. And then reviews are going to matter a lot. You know, what do those reviews and case studies look like? What are your past results? And I think also timelines. So there's a few agencies and I commend them for where they're at, and everyone starts at day one at some point. But if you're $3 million paint company, should you hire the company that started 6 months ago? Maybe not, right? They probably don't know what they don't know yet.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes what will happen is you'll have some company that has like really great initial success, but they've never been through a down market. I've been through several,
Mhm.
right? While being an agency owner, I've been through several. What do you do differently as an agency owner to help keep the doors open on a contracting company when 2008 repeats itself? What do you do? That's a different playbook. You know what I mean? That is way different than right now. And so if you just got started 6 months ago, there's no possible way you could know it. You know what I mean? And so I think that like doesn't mean that you can't hire them or work with them. Just understand the risk along with that. You know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, I think it's super nuanced, man. I think that the agency space needs more integrity, more open, honest, transparent numbers talking. A lot of agencies will inflate their numbers and pad things and overpromise and underdeliver.
Mm.
Like when I sit down with a person, I'll give you an example. a specific example. I have probably 10 or more people reach out to me on a weekly basis asking to start Google Ads. Now, we have some internal policies and practices, and we know when Google Ads is a good fit and when it's not. One of those things is the revenue of the client and whether how many other channels they have going, because Google Ads is incredibly expensive and it's super risky and it takes longer than most people think to dial in. Most people think I spend $1,000 on Google Ads and I just instantly get leads. It's not quite that simple.
Mhm.
You typically have to have really great reviews already because people will leave that and go back and look at your reviews. You have to have a really good website already. Doesn't mean they have to be ranking number one on SEO, but those things should be present. And just the cost per lead on Google Ads, my national average last year was right around 100, like a couple bucks less. It was in the
Yeah.
90s, but right around 100, right? But LSA average is right around 50. Facebook leads are out between 40 and 50. So, like, should it be the first thing you do as an advertising channel? No, no, God, no. And it doesn't mean it's a bad choice, but there's a time and an order of operation, right? So, like, if you were to go into a doctor's office, like, hey, I want to do this, I want to lose weight, or I want to get healthy, or check my heart, or whatever it is. There's going to be some things that are like, here's the things that need to happen, but also here's the order of those operations. And so I have to come in a lot of times and say, no, that's not right. But you know how many agencies will take a $2,000 a month retainer from a company making $10,000 a month for doing Google ads? It's scary, you
Yeah.
know? And that's sad, you know? And I also see, another thing I see huge is where, like, paid ad agencies, their fee will be higher than the ad spend that they're managing. So let's just say I have my fee is lower than this, but I'm just gonna give you even examples. Let's just say my agency's lowest fee is $2,000 a month, but the client only has, like, $2,500 a month. So I'm gonna charge them $2,000 a month and manage $500 in ad spend. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, no, if you only have 2,500 a month, either find an agency that'll charge you like 500, 750, $1,000, then take the rest in ad spend. So the ad spend is bigger than the agency fee,
Right.
or DIY it for now until you can afford that agency, because that relationship is not going to be great, no matter how you slice it. You're just way overspending on the labor. But I see that kind of thing. So, like, stealing assets, lack of integrity, overpromising, under-delivering, really backwards relationship of agency fee to spend fee, and it happens all the time, every day, for more people than it doesn't. Whereas the good agencies are super honest and transparent, both about the possible rewards, but also all of the risks. Because I don't care who you hire, what you do, there's always risk that I launch an ad and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Even if you follow someone's proven playbook, there's still a chance that it doesn't work. And so you need to know those upsides and you need to know those downsides. You need someone that will tell you the appropriate timelines because they vary, and you need to know what that is. And then you need someone that's truly on your side that will actually listen to both positive and negative feedback, take it in, adapt and move forward, and has really a good integrity along the way. And I think that the reason I believe that we're in the 1% is because we fit all those boxes,
Mhm.
right? It doesn't mean that we haven't had failures. I have, and I will again, but if given an opportunity, every failure we would fix. You know what I mean? Sometimes that people don't want to let you, and that's okay too. But, like, high integrity means you're always going to do the right thing,
Right.
and even when no
I
one's
mean,
watching.
when you almost compare it, like you sort of have the painting space, 1.1 average employee, let's say $150,000 in revenue.
Most agency owners are single people.
Right.
If it,
I mean,
that's
very similar in that sense, and there's
Mhm.
certainly a lot of unprofessional painting contractors, who have unprofessional work, and I mean, a lot of that would translate.
I actually think it's closer than people think. And actually, one of the analogies that I will use sometimes when people say, "Well, hey, how do I know you're for real?" I heard the same buzzwords from you that I've heard from the last 3 agencies that I've talked to, and I'll say this: what happens when you're a painter in front of a homeowner that's been screwed over by a previous painter?
And the
What do you
great
say? The reality is that both professions are service-based, which means you're taking your time to do a service for somebody else, right? Uh, Cooking, massaging, painting houses, agency, financial services, they're all time to have a hopeful desired outcome. And some of those people know what they're doing. and some of those people really don't and shouldn't be there. And the reality is that bad painter that went with the homeowner probably said the same reason. We'll show up on time, we'll be professional, blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. But then they don't, you know?
Yeah, it's a follow
And
through.
it's follow through, right? But the online reviews will show it. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
20 years ago, 25 years ago, Google wasn't even a thing. It was in its infancy. Google reviews weren't a thing yet. Google was brand new. YouTube didn't even exist yet, at that time. And so you back into that era, like the era that I grew up painting, it was really, really hard to tell the difference.
Mhm.
Now you can tell the difference because if I'm a really great paint company, I'm going to have probably a 4.7 to 5.0 star rating. I had a client that I was working with in the Florida market. I won't say more than that because I don't want to allude to who it was. But there was a client that I had in Florida, and I was trying to do all these marketing things. Ultimately, we ended up parting ways. I was not able to service this client right. But one of the biggest reasons why is every month they were getting 1 to 2 1-star reviews for very, very negative things. Like they promised they would do this and they didn't, and we called them out on it, they wouldn't come back, they wouldn't fix it, or they broke this door and they wouldn't fix it. Big, big items, not missing a touch up. Big nefarious issues of honesty and integrity. And marketing can't fix that. Now, what happens with the next paint company that goes to one of those clients? They're just not going to believe them. But we live in a world now where that company paid the price of reviews. You know what I mean? Those
Yeah, it
reviews are there.
democratizes the
It democratizes it, right? You can only hide so much, right? And I have some failures. Some of them have said something about it. Some of them haven't. But the way that we handle those things when they're there, because we are all going to mess up, I think is a really big indicator for both paint companies and agencies,
yeah.
right? If you do genuinely mess up, the way you handle it after is probably more important than the mess up that you made. Because everyone's going to miss a thing. Everyone's going to have a schedule. Everyone's going to break something. Everyone's going to spill a paint sometimes. Everyone's going to do something that doesn't align with expectations. Everyone. It's how we handle it, I think, that makes us better. And I think that if we can all, regardless of it being agency or painter or holding company or whatever, I think if just as humans, as business owners, if we can learn that one thing, we'll just be better because we're not going to stop trying to be better.
Right. I mean, you're gonna have whenever you're in a relation with somebody, you're gonna have your highs, you're gonna have your lows, and it's probably best to not pretend as if those mistakes and failures and lows won't exist, but to, set expectations that there are going to be times where, even with us on a holding company level, there are times where I'm frustrated that things aren't progressing as I would like them to progress. And there are absolutely times on the ground where they are frustrated that we're doing certain things. And I think the best bet is just to set that expectation early so as the first time you butt heads like that, it's not, the blowing up of the relationship, but rather, how can we work through this together to make sure that we are
I,
moving forward?
I agree. And I would say as an agency owner, I actually created an article and a video about this because I've serviced a few thousand clients in my career, right? I have over 100 at the moment, which means that 90% of the clients I've worked with are no longer my current clients.
Yeah.
And there are a variety of reasons. Sometimes they go out of business, sometimes they sell, sometimes they move to another agency, sometimes they retire, sometimes you suck and they go with somebody else, right? There's the whole gamut of reasons, right? And but I wrote an article because I really think it's fascinating. One of the biggest things that I think creates that breakup of agency to client is actually not performance. And it's actually not any of those other things. I think what you just alluded to is how do we solve those problems, right? Um, if you are a company, like we talked about this earlier, it's easier to retain a client than to buy a new one. It's
Yeah.
easier to retrain and retain an employee than to fire a new one. It's actually easier to retain your agency than to switch agencies. And
True.
so this is something that we do that is extremely uncommon, right? I had someone come to me that was with Base Coat Marketing, right? And Austin at Base Coat Marketing, I think, is a very, very stand up dude. And he came to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about switching agencies because I'm not seeing the performance." Now, I'm not seeing the performance or the performance isn't there are two different things,
Yeah.
right? So the first thing I said is, okay, well, can we open up the books a little bit and can you share what you see, what's going on? And it turns out, we dug in about 30 minutes, we were able to figure out that actually his numbers looked really great. He was getting about 7% cost of marketing, and which is fantastic. And I was like, yeah, dude, I really don't think you should switch at all. I think what you should do is you should call the company, talk to your customer service rep and say, hey, this is what I'm not seeing. And I think now that I'm looking at X instead of Y, I think this is actually really healthy, but I wasn't seeing this before. Can we work through this so I have more transparency on these numbers? And he did, and they're still with them today.
Yeah.
Right? That is it is easier to work through nearly all of those problems. Now, don't get me wrong, if your agency is being disingenuous or if they are absolutely inept, for sure move to somebody that's not. But I'm talking about within the professionalized companies, if there's something that's amiss, and it's almost always communication, almost always. I mean, I had an instance where we were editing some videos for a Facebook ad for somebody a couple weeks ago, and the client had a very limited explanation of what they wanted. It wasn't detailed, right? And so basically like one sentence description of what this video should be like. So we inferred and filled in some blanks on that and we sent it to them and they did not like it, which forced a loop to describe what they actually did want. Once they were frustrated about that loop, really frustrated.
Yeah.
But once we had the loop and we said, oh, you don't like this, you want this, you don't like this, you want this, we went back, gave it to my video editor. She edited a new version. They were like, yeah, it's perfect. Amazing what happens when we have communication. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And so I would say that throughout my career, over 90% of the cases where clients leave an agency are really not due to performance. They're due to communication about performance. Because if I have an employee on my team that doesn't do something, I will retrain with them. I will work with them. If you have an agency that, yeah, they don't work for you in the traditional sense, more of a 1099 subcontractor, but they are servicing your business and should act on behalf, almost like a fiduciary of your business.
Mhm.
And as long as they're an integral company, they will do that. But sometimes there's feedback loops that you need to have. And maybe you just need to have 2 meetings a month instead of one. Maybe you need to have some of those hard conversations that you've been putting off, you know? And I think if we do, and we have really great conversations, including about the hard stuff, you'll switch agencies less and you'll have a better partner. And I think ultimately your cost of marketing will go down, your profits will go up.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, definitely thinking about it in terms of, uh, they are an extension of your team,
They
right?
are.
And they directly are working, on your behalf to forward your business. So rather than treating it as, uh, like a vendor type relationship, treat it more so like a
As a partner.
partnership because it is.
Mhm. It is, and I mean, some agencies actually have like revenue share type partner models. Like we have an option for that. It's not our most common, but there is an option for where we actually do that. But most of the time, it's like a set fee for a set amount of deliverables, right?
Yeah.
X fee to do Facebook ads, Y fee to do Google ads, whatever, right? That's pretty common, and it doesn't really matter the pricing model as long as it makes sense for you and they are someone that you can trust to actually be that partner. That's all you really need, right? There's going to be good days and bad days, good weeks, bad months, good quarters, bad quarters, but if they're truly on your side, they're going to continue to test and listen and work and evolve. And, you know, the other thing that, just like we talked about, like changing customers and changing employees has like an increased cost. It's hard to see on the P&L.
Mhm.
Changing agencies has a very, very large one. Even if the agency that you're going to switch to, let's just say this agency is going to have like maybe a 1 or 2% better performance,
Yeah.
right? I promise you, when you switch agencies, the next 3 months are going to be worse. So you are trading the next 3 months of a near guaranteed, probably 25% less performance for the maybe 1, 2, 3, 4% increase after that. Is that worth it?
Right, and it's the reality too that, like, there's enough work to go around,
Oh,
for
100%.
everybody. Like, in
100%.
the painting space, there's plenty of work, in the agency space, there's plenty of work.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and to not be, coming at each other so much, I think is something that, uh
There's a few people that do, but I mean, I'm not, I mean, there's a couple people in the agency space I don't like because I've seen those human behaviors that I don't agree with.
Yeah.
And, I don't fight them, but I'm not going to support them either, right? I'll just
Right.
withdraw and just they can do their own thing. And then there's a handful of other agencies that I send people to all the time because I'm not the best fit. Maybe sometimes people, I'm just not, it's not even like revenue or service fit. Maybe the personalities just don't align. I'm like, yeah, this is probably not going to work. But
Yeah.
I know a guy over here that's really great, and I think your personality type and his are better fit. So go work
Right.
with him. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that because agency client relationships have so much communication requirements. Those communication loops are really deep, very personal. Most of my clients, dude, I end up learning about their kids, their
Mhm.
life problems. Like, we talked about that, like the business thing where like you may not have someone to talk to. You know how many times I have like my business clients call me up and like, man, I don't know what to do. Like, I feel like this week I'm on the verge of like bankruptcy. I can't make payroll. I don't have enough cash flow. Blah blah blah. Like, I get those things.
Yeah.
I hear about the like, I almost can't buy kids presents for Christmas. I hear those a lot, right? And so we become like a truly trusted partner, like, and to many of my clients, like we're friends. I've become friends with many of my clients, and I love that kind of trust and all that stuff. But the point is like, even if it doesn't go that far, it doesn't have to. I don't care if it does or not. But if you know that this person is on your business's side, you probably should stay put.
Yeah.
You know, and I turn people away all the time, that I like, "Dude, it's not even worth the cost of switching." You know? You've got really good results where you are. You would be better served spending an extra 1, 2% of your time communicating with the agency you have than shopping around other agencies. And if you do, you'll have a better relationship, you'll have better cost of marketing, you'll have better results, your stress will go down, everything will be better.
It's great marriage advice too.
It really is. It's human to human advice.
Yeah.
It's business partners, it's employees, it's spousal, it's parent to kid, it's agency to client. It's not, it's like it's bigger than that. And for me, like the older I've gotten, the less I fret about these little details. And I'm just like, dude, all I just want is great humans in my life because the rest of that shit will work itself out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You put great people in, whether it's you holding a painting company and I'm the CEO of a painting company, or I'm your agency partner, whatever, right? When we're decent human beings to each other, everything just gets a little bit better. And I love it.
Yeah. I mean, that's really what it's all about, surrounding yourself with high quality, good people that you
Yep.
can trust to have your best interests, in hand.
Yep. Yep. It's a tough one, man, but I mean that's the goal, right? Yeah. That's where I'm at in my life. I really just don't have patience for anyone that doesn't fit that bill, you know?
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, cool, man. Dude, I have enjoyed this conversation a lot, man. I've loved getting to know you and about your business, man. And I genuinely hope we will continue this conversation both offline and maybe another future podcast again. Before we wrap up and leave, I'd like to ask if you have any final parting thoughts or advice for anyone still here hanging out at the end of this podcast episode.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, again, it goes back to the word that defines everything that we do, and that is systems. So regardless of whether, we end up contractors out there working together directly or not, find a way to bring professional systems to your business and treat your business like it's a big deal because it is. It's yours. It has your name on it. It's your reputation. It's your legacy. It's everything. And by treating it like it matters, because it does, and putting systems in place, you're going to build something that is inherently valuable for yourself, your family, your children, and generations to come. And we very intentionally named our company Legacy Pink Holdings because what we want to enable contractors to do is to create a legacy that otherwise has been very, very difficult, if not impossible, to create in the past. And you're worth that. Every contractor is worth creating that legacy for themselves. And I truly hope that you can put those systems in place that help to, create a business that is inherently more valuable because of it.
I love it. I love it. I couldn't agree with you more, man. Systems and people, man. It's how we run businesses. And I definitely agree that we should all take our businesses a little bit more seriously and build something for the next generation. Love it.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, dude, it's been a pleasure having you on. Everyone else, we'll see you around. Take care, everybody. Bye bye. Hey, if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. If you're looking for help growing your contracting business, I invite you to join my free community. In there, we go live with amazing trainings, share resources and downloads, plus you get free help from me and from peers. That link is down below to join, and we'll see you in the next video.